This is your place for all things Detroit Red Wings and all things Chicago Blackhawks. With your hosts, Jordan Linscott, David Barnhouse, Nick LePage, and Tim Stompanato. This is the Stick Blade Podcast. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to another edition of the Stick Blade Podcast. It is your place for all things Detroit Red Wings, all things Chicago Blackhawks, and just general news around the NHL. On tonight's show, we've got a little bit of a short one, nothing major. Again, we're on the off season right now. The whole league is basically not functioning at this point due to COVID restrictions. There's some talk about, when the season's even going to start for that matter. And so on tonight's episode, we're going to be doing just a little talk about on each team's defensive pool, what the pairings might potentially look like for this coming season, and then also steps that we're looking for each player to take in terms of just development or role that they're going to take on. Tonight's episode is the first, I guess, official video podcast that we're going to be trying for the show. Hopefully it works. If not, well, it was an experiment that we tried anyway. So anyway, with that being said, that's our show for tonight. I'm your host, Jordan Linscott, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, David Barnhouse and Tim Stompanato. Nick is on hiatus right now doing whatever an LG is. I don't know if that means he's getting a refrigerator, if he's getting a new television.
He's becoming a refrigerator.
Becoming a refrigerator. He's going to be like one of the new test people for the 6G internet that I've heard that's in development, where like it just goes like right into your skin or something.
Where Elon Musk is going to put a chip on your brain.
Yeah,
like he can execute Order 66.
It's just going to be the Matrix. Like you just put like little SD cards in, and all of a sudden, whoosh! I know kung fu.
Great.
But how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Doing well.
I'm reeling a little bit from that Bears Lions game earlier today. I was so close to being happy, and per usual, I was robbed of happiness. Thanks, Chicago Bears.
Hey, that's what the Lions do to me every week.
That's fair.
We finally robbed it from someone else, so it's okay.
You took it from me this week.
See, but you guys are both lucky because you guys at least get to know what to expect from your guys' clubs. Like, I'm a Titans fan, and for me, it's frustrating because we can hang with like the top teams some weeks, and then other weeks we're playing against just like middle of the road teams. We just get completely blown out. Like,
no, the Titans are such a weird team.
But you have Derrick Henry, and he literally picks up grown men and throws them like their child.
He just does like the Leonidas carry.
But that's also the cruelty. Like, it gives you that much hope because you know they can do it, but then they decide to just not play some weeks.
Okay, well, I mean, if you guys are up for it, let's go ahead and just jump right into tonight's episode of the podcast. Like I mentioned at the offset, we're going to be talking about the defensive groups for both the Chicago Blackhawks and the Detroit Red Wings. I don't think it's really a secret to either team's fan bases that those are positions that both teams really need to get an overhaul of, the Red Wings in particular. Tim, since you're the lone Blackhawk host on this tonight's episode, why don't we start with the Hawk side of this podcast and just sort of look at their defensive group at this coming season and just sort of the steps that we're looking for players like Boquist or like Mitchell, for example, to take.
Here's the thing. The Blackhawks are in a weird position because we have so many different combinations and so many defensemen that could potentially be playing this year, and there isn't realistically room for everyone. Because right now I'm looking at a list of, we've got Keith, Murphy, Zadorov, Boquist, Seabrook, Dahan, and like that's 6. And that doesn't count Mitchell. That doesn't count Lucas Carlson. Beaudin's going to definitely start in Rockford. I think that's where he's going to be best, growing another year there. I think what's interesting, we're obviously looking for a step forward from Boquist, who had an up and down rookie season, but he had a realistic rookie season. He looked overwhelmed at times, but he still belonged there. He was making smart plays. He was making rookie mistakes, but he was a rookie. The big step for me is, did he bulk up a little bit? Did he gain a little more confidence? And is he going to come into this year ready to take those next steps in his sophomore year? I know that they've talked about either continuing to pair him with Keith as another mentor, as a mentor role again, or pairing him with Zadorov, where you have a defensive first stay-at-home defenseman that can sort of protect the blue line and allow Boquist to explore his offensive potential a little bit more. That's exciting to me. What that means, however, is that if we have Zadorov and Boquist together, we still need to have a partner for Keith, and then fit. So we've got Keith, Murphy, Seabrook, and DeHaan. That realistically, Seabrook's going to play. He's healed up. If he says he's back and ready, it's his spot to lose. I think that Ian Mitchell, our like highly touted, coming in star prospect, I think he's going to start in Rockford. I think his play could prove that he should be in the NHL, but where it's best served for the team at this time might be for him to start in Rockford, be on that first line, first defensive pairing, be their power play quarterback, all that, play in all situations, and let him play for a year in the AHL. I think that that's going to allow him to be playing against men, which he wasn't before. He was playing with college, and give other people like DeHaan and Murphy, it gives Zadorov time to show what he can do. That allows the more veteran players to get their gel together and allows Mitchell to basically run wild in the AHL.
Now, my thing was, I mean, you mentioned it, Boquist had an up and down rookie season. I mean, part of that also was just because of, I mean, it was organizational need in terms of, you guys are pretty much injury ridden on defense last year.
Decimated.
And that call up for him was interesting because it wasn't this player's ready, let's see what he has at the next level.
No.
This was literally a call up of need. And like you mentioned, it was an up and down year for him. I think the playoffs, admittedly, I think he looked a little bit out of place.
Oh, yeah.
But he showed like he was at least taking steps in the right direction. Just in your opinion, do you think that the Hawks should put him with Keith again, or do you think they should actually pair him with a guy like Zadorov? Because I think Keith is obviously going to get the top competition. He's their certified top pair defenseman still, and I don't think there's really a question about that. But is that competition, just Boquist playing against the top, something that he can really handle right now?
I think having him with Keith last year was incredibly beneficial from a mentorship standpoint. I don't think that it serves either of them this year to be together. I think that if Boquist is able to play with Zadorov, if Zadorov shows that he can be defensively responsible like he's supposed to be, I think putting him on a second or third pairing as Zadorov and Boquist allows Boquist to play against not top line talent and gives him a little more flexibility to build confidence, try his plays a little bit more, hone his skill set and craft. And what it also does is free up Duncan Keith. Duncan Keith the last year, and even the year before that with Yoki Haru, had to be that much more defensively responsive, couldn't pinch a little bit more and couldn't risk some of those more offensive plays because he was serving as the defensive-minded defenseman. Giving him someone like Murphy or DeHaan, or if Seabrook can do it, get him up there. Like, let Keith be Keith and let him run wild again instead of having to mentor somebody. I think that's going to put Boquist and Keith in places that they can maximize where they're at.
Okay. I mean, you just mentioned Seabrook. I mean, it seems like from everything that I've seen on social media, Seabrook has full intentions to come back and play with the club. Last year he had that injury, which basically put him out for a good portion of the season. Let's say Seabrook doesn't make that jump back. Let's say the doctors tell him, "Nah, you probably shouldn't be playing right now still," or it's just it's so evident on the ice when he takes the ice that he shouldn't be playing. How do you think that impacts then the way that the Hawks handle their defensive pairs? Because again, Seabrook is a veteran like Keith who was there and who has plenty of time in the NHL. I mean, he was one of the defensive core pieces for them during those cup
Okay.
runs.
Oh, we don't get at least one of the cups. We don't get the 2013 cup in my mind without Seabrook. Uh, his leadership, his skill set that he brought to the table in those years, along with his leadership, is completely valuable. But what it does if he's still on long-term injury reserve or just has to come back later, that frees things up a little bit. Because now you don't have to worry about fitting him in, and you can either put Mitchell in there to start, or one of my favorite dark horse candidates, Lucas Carlson, who has shown in the games that he played last year, in his play in Rockford the last couple of years, smooth skating, smart puck moving defenseman. I think that Lucas Carlson could hang in the show full time, frankly. Maybe not as a top four, but as a third pairing guy. That's what we need, is someone who's sound and like responsible. I think Lucas Carlson comes in there. I think that he's a fine seventh defenseman, but if you've got him and Mitchell or him and Boquist switching out games, that way the rookies are getting chances to breathe. Now we've got ourselves a little more mixed match based on the competition. You've got more people growing, and you don't have to worry about keeping Seabrook happy, which I think is an important aspect.
Okay. I mean, David, let's say you're in Chicago's shoes and you've got, these basically two rookies. I mean, Boquist isn't considered a rookie by contract situation this year
Yeah.
just because, he exceeded the 9 games last season.
Legally, he's not a rookie.
Yeah, right. Like contractually speaking, he's not a rookie, but in terms of actual play time, I think he would still classify as a rookie. I mean, like,
I
let's
would
say
say
you're in
that. Yeah.
Chicago's shoes in this space. What do you think that the right move is for them to do?
I mean, there's pluses and minuses to it. I mean, you pair him with a guy like Keith, top line defenseman, put him on the top line. He's going to learn and be mentored by Keith, but at the same time, he's going up against, top pairing teams. He's going to face guys like Connor McDavid, guys like Dylan Larkin, all those types of players. And that might be hard for him to keep up with when he's still kind of learning the NHL side of the game. I mean, then you put him down in a second or third line pairing. Is he going to get as many minutes to develop? Not as many as a first line pairing. So it's a really tough choice to me. I mean, he had flashes last year where he looked really good. Start him on the first line. If he's struggling, just bump him down a line. I mean, it's going to hurt your veteran too. Guys like Keith having to work with someone that they're not as comfortable with, but you got to fight through that as a team. So if he's struggling, move him down. If he's thriving, keep him there.
Okay. The other question mark for, I think, Chicago is really Zadorov. I mean, Bowman talked about in a lot of his media pressers that they want to use Zadorov kind of as a almost like a facilitator to help guys, ease into this level of competition because he's not a certified top pair guy. So you're not going to throw him out against these top line guys, like a McDavid or a Crosby or an Ovechkin or a Backstrom or
He did
McKinnon
play
or
against Patrick Kane a lot with Colorado, which I thought was an interesting thing to note, that he was consistently out against Kane. That's the only thing that I can think of with him playing against top line talent, but it is something interesting to note.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in terms of like his traditional play time, he's not going to be just constantly going against the top line like competition that you'll see a guy like Keith or Seabrook going for. At least Seabrook when he was at his top of his game. So I mean, Zadorov, I think fits that middle pair or bottom pair defensive position if they're looking to develop one of the young players. You mentioned Lucas Carlson. He's somebody who in particular does not have a lot of time at the NHL level. And even, you just said you think he starts in Rockford. Do you think that maybe the coaching staff, if Seabrook's not coming back, says, all right, we're going to put Mitchell, or not, I said Mitchell, they're going to bring Carlson up. They're going to put him with Zadorov on the bottom pair, and they'll play, I don't know, Murphy and Boquist on the second pair? Or how do you think that that works then?
If it were me putting things together, I would put Zadorov and Boquist together on what would be technically considered the third line or the third pairing at that point, and I would put Dahan and Murphy together to start. Wait a minute. No, I lied. Lucas Carlson and Murphy. That's what I would put, and I would put Keith and Dahan together up at top.
Okay.
Because I think Dahan and Murphy could be a phenomenal, just shut down, nothing's getting through lockdown pairing, which really excites me. Yeah, they could do that. I think Carlson offers balance because he's a left-handed defenseman and Murphy's a right-handed defenseman. And they each do that offensive, defensive. So that could work. Zadorov and Boquist and Keith and Dahan.
Okay.
That's what I would start the year with.
So, I mean, that kind of covers the pairings. What steps in terms of development do you think that these players need to be taking, in particular, the really young guys like a Boquist or like a Mitchell or like Carlson? Because this is, I think, really the chance for these guys to start developing in terms of just establishing what kind of players they're going to be at the NHL level.
Yeah, I think Boquist, the main thing that I'd like to see steps in this year, obviously, I want to see more of that offensive potential. I want him to tap into that a little bit more, but that's going to come with confidence and not being stuck in the defensive zone. So his offense is going to come from a little smarter, a little sounder defensive play, maybe get a little better with his stick. He's never going to be a guy that is taking runs, checking guys into the boards, things like that. But if he can get a little tighter on his stick, and if he can utilize that a little bit better and get some of those clean plays out, then that's the step that's going to allow him to tap into his offense if he's not hemmed into the defensive side the whole time. Lucas Carlson, I think it's just reps at this point. I think he's shown where he's at. I think he's defensively sound. He has some offensive potential. He's intelligent with his plays. Now it's just a matter of doing it and allowing him the opportunity to do it. Any step forward this year is because he's getting the reps. Mitchell is an unknown. I mean, in a lot of ways, he's never played an NHL game. We know he captained Denver last year. We know he's a phenomenal prospect. I think he reminds me a lot of Keith when he was younger. With that in mind, I still think that Mitchell's best move for both the club and for his growth is to start the year in Rockford.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about on the Hawks? And before we move over to the Red Wings side of the podcast, Tim?
I'm excited to see Dahan this year and excited to see if Dahan stays healthy, which I think has been a big issue the last couple of years for him, even when he was in Carolina, because he kept re-injuring the same shoulder. And that's one of the things that typically injuries don't worry me if it's always a different thing. But when it's the same thing over and over again, that starts to be a red flag. And especially if Seabrook isn't able to start the year and we've got Dahan who's doing all right and then he's knocked out. Now we're a little thin again. Now do we rush Mitchell? Now do we put Bodan in and get him a cup of coffee? Dahan's health is going to be a big one for me.
Okay.
Doesn't worry you. It's okay. He's only broken his left leg, then his right leg, then his left foot, then his right foot. Then he tore his arm off, but they sewed it back on. He's going to be fine because it's all different things.
Well, that's just a bunch of bad luck at that point.
I think if that basically covers everything, we can move over to the Red Wings side of this
Time
podcast.
out. Time out. I feel like I've seen Tim drink out of like 4 different things.
I saw
I've
the
got
big mug. I saw that was the
Saw
only
the
one that I
mug, I
saw.
saw the can, and I feel like I saw something else. Maybe I'm just going crazy.
yeah, I've got a wide assortment. I've got a bottle of water. I've got a cherry Coke. I've got a cup of tea.
That
I
happens
like
to
to
me when I'm
balance them.
teaching. When I'm teaching in the morning, I'll have my, you can see them there on the table, my cup and my coffee mug, and my students will be like, "How many drinks do you have over there, Mr. B?" And I'm like, "Just my coffee and water, guys."
Double fisting.
We can move over to the Red Wings side of this podcast now. So looking forward into this season, the Red Wings' basic defensive group, and I guess, and again, this is all, I guess, kind of speculative because the Red Wings had, what was it, 3 off-season departures? Was it Jonathan Erickson left, Trevor Daley left?
Trevor Daly
Uh,
moved on to a winning team. He's a winner.
Technically, yes, he did. He did go to Pittsburgh to be like some like coaching staff or
Yeah.
something like that for their front office.
So Erickson, Daly.
Who was it? Yeah. Oh, Bowie, Madison Bowie. He was the other one.
Mhm.
Um, so
But then we brought in a bunch of people too.
we did.
Yeah.
So in terms of this season, it looks like, at least in terms of certified roster players that Detroit's going to have on their blue line, Mark Stahl, the pickup from the New York Rangers this offseason. They're going to have John Merrill, Troy Stetcher. Those are 2 other pickups that they had this
Patrick
offseason.
Nemeth.
Yeah, Patrick Nemeth. You're going to have Phil Peronic and Danny DeKeyser still. So that's at least your base core looking at this season.
Mm-hmm. Looking at others, we still have Cholowski, Lindstrom, and Sider that are still kind of floating around there too.
Yeah, those are the guys who are kind of on like the outside bubble of it, trying to press in. Just looking at our group, David, what do you think is going on with this group? Do you think that the moves that we made this off season were an upgrade, or like how do you view them? Because I don't feel like the Hawks were necessarily active on the off season for defensive pickups like we were. So like I feel like our defensive group completely changed compared to last year.
Oh, for sure. It's completely changed. Iserman's bringing in people he knows too. Like he's worked with a few of them, I think. But I don't think these are our, hey, we're going to make the playoffs defensemen. These are guys that are filling roster spots. They have short contracts. They have a veteran presence. They're going to help our young guys develop. But they're going to help the team. You know, it's not like he's just saying, okay, put that traffic cone on the ice so we can save money. No, we have to spend money to have a team, and we can't just throw all of our young guys in there because they're going to struggle. So he's getting guys like Stahl, like Nemeth, like Lynch and Merrill, or Merrill and whoever.
Stetcher.
Stetcher. I don't remember the signing of Stetcher, so he's a brand new person to me. I remember seeing the Merrill announcement, and I'm like, I don't even remember seeing the Stetcher announcement. Was that yesterday? But yeah, these aren't guys that are going to bring us back to the cup. These are guys that are going to help the rebuild process. They're going to fill up roster spots and help the young guys, grow and develop. To me, at least.
I mean, just looking at this season in terms of like the players that we're going to have access to, Detroit's in a weird spot because Philip Hronek took a huge step forward last season, basically logging, I think it was like 23 minutes on average a night, which is, in terms of defensemen, a pretty high number. That's a top pairing defenseman's numbers. Played power play. It was, I believe it was about a half a point per game, which as a defenseman is not bad at all.
Nope.
And then from there, you've got Danny DeKeyser, who I think is a top 4 defenseman still, not a top pair guy, but just I think like a middle pair defenseman. You've got Stahl, who I think is a bottom 4 guy. You have Nemeth, who again, bottom 4 guy. Stetcher, like we have so many like bottom 4 defensemen and only one certified top 4/top pair guy this season going in. I think realistically, what I would like to see from the Red Wings defensive pairs, I would like to see Philip Hronek being placed with Patrick Nemeth. I think Hronek is an offensive powerhouse when it comes to defensemen, and Nemeth is more of like the shutdown type guy. He's not an offensive defenseman, in my opinion. You can put Stahl on the middle pair with basically whoever you want, because see, that's basically what he's going to be serving as, is a middle pair
Mhm.
defenseman. And then the bottom pair, you're literally putting Stetcher and either like Biega or gosh,
Merrill.
Merrill. So they have a decent middle pair. They have like a half of a top pair, and then the bottom pair is basically just whoever.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at a bunch of people's predictions for lineups, and there was a bunch of them that were like Hronek to Kaiser as the first pair. And I'm like, yes, Hronek, definitely. First pair defenseman for me, hands down. De Kaiser coming back from a back injury. Um, I've never been super high on him. Yes, he's a hometown kid, all that stuff. I would put him down to the second pair just because he's unknown to me right now because of his injury. And like you said, Hronek is a very offensive defenseman. Put a guy like Nemeth with him, defensive defenseman. My second line pairing, I would probably put, like I said, Danny DeKaiser there with Mark Stahl. I was actually leaning Mark Stahl first pair, but I'm like, Nemeth is the more defensive guy. We need that to help cover for Hronek. And then third pair, like you said, you have your Stetcher,
Stetcher.
Skechers shoes,
It's the S.
Stetcher Sketchers.
and the Pokemon Meryl. So
Skechers and Pokemon. There we go.
Skechers and Pokemon.
Perfect third line.
You have them, and then you have all these other guys that I like. Biega could fill in third pair, second pair, whatever. But and I know we're going to talk about it, but guys like Sider, who is our defenseman of the future. We have Cholowski and Lindstrom, those guys that we saw play a lot last year. I wouldn't want them to fill in on a third line pair. Like I would actually put Sider first or second at times when we call him up just to get him those minutes. But let's talk about that, I guess.
I was gonna ask where you guys see Sider popping up this year, because I know you were both high on him. I'm just curious if he's earned, in your mind, a full-time slot in the show, or if he's still gonna cook in the AHL for a year.
So I think Moritz Seider should be at the NHL level. If you look at his track record for like his play through the past couple of years, he was very good in the DEL. He came to the AHL, was very decent. He wasn't, torching the league by any means, but you could definitely tell he was not out of place. And he's literally just running through people over in Sweden right now. I'm pretty sure he's one of the top scoring defensemen right now in the league, which the SHL is basically considered, one of the top 3 leagues in the world. I mean, it's literally the NHL, the KHL, and then the SHL. Those are basically the top 3 leagues in the world.
Yeah.
So you've got him literally dominating at a level that's not really super far underneath the NHL in terms of skill level. I think he needs to be at the show. I mean, you can't tell me that he's going to be any worse than Alex Biega, for example, or that he's going to be any worse than Adam Ernie. I just don't see it.
Oh, Adam Ernie is a forward though.
Is he? I could have swore he was. Or not Adam Ernie. Sorry. It was Biega and
Skechers.
Skechers, Skechers.
Well, is there any chance that they use Skechers? Now I'm shot now. Is there any chance that they use him or Merrill as your 7th defenseman, or Big as the 7th defenseman, and jockey things around and maybe put Sider with Stahl?
I mean, I could see Sider with either Stahl, or I could see him with DeKaiser on the second pair. Yeah.
I mean, maybe if that's the case, maybe they put Stahl on the third line, and he's a veteran presence. But I mean, his speed, his skates aren't what they used to be. He's still a sound defensive mind. He can still shut people down. but he's not. He's not where he was a couple years ago. I'd have been thrilled to have him on a top four. But what he can still provide is that veteran presence and those intangibles that I love so much, while still
Everyone loves
providing
intangibles.
while still providing a safe and stable third line, and that maybe that opens things up for Seider.
And that's the thing, right? Like Stahl wasn't let go from New York just because, he was a bad player.
No,
New York needed to free up cap space. He's taking, what is
Mhm.
it, almost $5 or $6 million, I think. I mean, the problem is his contract was too expensive for the player that they were getting.
Yeah.
And he's still a competent defenseman. He's not a top pair guy. I don't think any of us would say that he is, but he's definitely a guy that can fill your bottom four.
yeah, and you're not gonna. He's gonna be perfectly serviceable. He was just a victim of the flat cap.
Yeah.
Frankly, they would have
Mhm.
run out his contract, I think, if the cap had gone up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, of course, for sure.
And that's the thing. They're on the hook for him for what is it, 1 year basically. So I mean, it was literally New York had to shed dollars. They had to shed cap dollars somewhere.
And it was a good business strategic move to get rid of him, but I don't think they would have gotten rid of that leadership unless they were in a position like that where they had to.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. New York's not a budget team. I mean, they literally have all the money they want to spend. They're like Dallas. They're like Detroit. Their owners are willing to fork out dollars.
Yeah.
Um,
But I really want to see Seider, like you said, playing more on the wings this season than the Griffins. I think he's capable. My dream scenario is a Seider Hronek line. That
I
would
know
be
that
fun to
you've
watch.
talked about that a couple of times, and I do like, just from what I've seen from clips of both of them and from what you guys have described, that's your pairing of the future. That's your top line.
That would be, to me, I mean, they're not going to be anywhere near the caliber of player Lidstrom is. Like, Lidstrom, in my opinion, is one of the greatest hockey players of all time, the greatest defenseman of all time.
It's a bold statement.
It would be like watching Lidstrom with Rafalski with me. Like, I loved watching that pairing because Rafalski was a very smart defenseman. Lidstrom could do everything. Like, Hronek can do so much on the offensive side, and Seider can do both. So,
Yeah.
like, it'll be fun to watch if they both develop and they can both become, that top pair defenseman together.
I mean, I guess how I would kind of describe that pairing is Hronek and Seider have the potential to be Detroit's equivalent of the Keith Seabrook pairing from when Chicago was a powerhouse.
I'll take that.
Keith played great shutdown and could contribute offensively. That's what Seider does. Seabrook and Hronek, both very offensive defensemen, just love to shoot. I think that's honestly like a great comparison in terms of like the role that those two can play on Detroit's team when the team's finally ready to be contending again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if Seider's going to be as good as Duncan Keith, but I mean, I'm hoping.
Well, what is it? What is Oh, okay. What's Dallas's top pairing? Is that Klingberg and Heiskanen?
I want to say yes. I want to say it's
Because
Klingberg and Heiskanen.
those two skill sets remind me a lot of what I'm seeing from Hronek and Seider. Like, they've got a really nice blend and balance of skill sets. No real weaknesses, but definitely areas where each one shines.
Lindell Klinberg, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I could get to. It's just a very well-rounded. If both of them pan out and continue to grow the way that they're projecting, it's going to be just a reliable, what you're looking for in a top pairing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, David, what do you think is happening with Lindstrom this current season? And Lindstrom with the D, just so everyone is
That's
not
tripped me
confusing
up a
it with
couple
Nick
times, I'm not
Lidstrom.
lying.
What would happen if, like, he wears, like, a dark shield face mask, and the whole time it's just Nick Lidstrom, this season? No, I think he's going to be in the AHL for a good portion of it. I think he'll be a top line pairing there, and he'll get called up, throughout the season to play for the Wings. He's looked good when he played for the Wings, but like I said earlier, we have a lot of veterans that are filling up those roster spots right now. but he'll come in every so often, I think.
No, and like that's the thing, right? Because I mean, I don't think that Lindstrom is ready for the NHL full time yet. I
Mhm.
think probably the Grand Rapids Griffins is the spot that they're going to put him in. I don't think that just in terms of size he's ready. I don't think in terms of just speed he's ready to play. He wasn't terrible when he was playing with Detroit, but you could definitely tell that there was work that needed to be done still with him.
Mhm.
Um, and then finally, Dennis Chalowski is just another weird piece in our pipeline because, I mean,
Den Cholo.
so his last 2 seasons he started with Detroit. And during one of those seasons, he was absolutely on fire when it came to offensive production. I mean,
Yep.
he was scoring at a very good rate for a rookie defenseman. And then teams adapted to him. They started exploiting the fact that he was not assertive enough in the defensive zone or in the offensive
Mhm.
zone to like really just force space and close gaps. And so that causes defensive liability. He gets sent back down. I mean, what do you think happens with him this season? Because I feel like this is one of those seasons where he's going to have a chance to really assert, if he gets a chance, a spot on this roster.
I don't think he makes opening night lineup, um, but I think he will work his way into the lineup, and he's got to prove he can hang with the big boys. So he's shown it before with him being on that scoring streak, like we said. I could see him getting right back to it. So I have faith in him. I like him a lot.
I mean, Steve Eiserman himself even had like a sit down with him and basically told him, like, you can produce offensively, but he wasn't just being assertive enough when it came to his
Mhm.
play time. I mean, do you think that's something that lights a fire under him to say, like, yeah, I can be better. I should be
When the
better. I mean,
captain when the captain tells you that, yeah, he's telling you, he's saying you're good, but you can do better. And this is something that can be coachable. You can work on your shot, you can work on your skating, you can work on your defensive presence easily. It just takes a coach to do that with you and have a staff that can help you work with that. And the veterans that you can play with, like the Stalls, like the Sketchers, like the Pokemons, they can help him.
that that is John Merrill's nickname now, and that's Troy Stetcher's now.
Oh, I'm
Stetcher
shocked.
the Sketchers.
All it is Skechers now. That's it.
We should buy him a pair of those one weird ass looking Skechers that are like the tidal wave looking shoe that helps with your walking support.
Stick
And just
Blade
say
boys.
for you Skechers, we love
Happy
you
opening
from
night,
the Stick Blade
Skechers.
Boys.
Get like a pair of like just blank white Skechers, and then have somebody like draw his face on them, and then just put that next to the Skechers logo. Skechers.
I mean,
Skechers. I think
I'd get
they're
it.
the Arch Fit. That's what those are called, right?
I don't know. Last time I saw a pair of Skechers, it was on Legends of the Hidden Temple, and that was the big prize. So,
These things. What the heck are these things? Hold on. I want to hold this up to the screen. Look at that.
There's more sole than shoe there.
Yeah, that's
Look at that
a
thing.
lot of. God bless you. All right.
It's literally more sole than shoe.
They're running shoes. How could I run in that?
Yeah, that's. Well, now you send him that shoe. You say, "Congratulations, Skechers. You're the soul of the team."
But in all seriousness, though, I mean, I really think that maybe that's what Detroit's gonna do with Lindstrom. I mean, maybe they'll play him as a seventh D if they think that out of camp that he looks like he's potentially ready to be, I don't want to say a regular, but a fill-in guy for them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a forward that they would have as like a 13th forward besides maybe Evgeny Svechnikov or Giovanni Smith, but we're going to talk about that in a different episode because
goalies, I mean, we can do a quick rundown of goalies. The Red Wings have Grice and Bernier, and I think they're going to be a 50-50 split. I think Bernier gets opening night just because he's been here. But I think they'll split 50-50.
And that's the thing. I mean, Thomas Grice and Jonathan Bernier are not bad goaltenders.
No, not at all.
I think Grice is better, but Bernier's the team veteran.
And that's the thing,
now
right?
That Jimmy Howard's gone.
I mean, you look at the losses last season that Detroit suffered. A lot of those losses were not Jonathan Bernier's fault. Let's just be very clear on that. Like those losses were not on him. I saw plenty of games where he stole the show and kept that team in the game. Even if they lost, he was the one that kept that team in the game. And Thomas Greiss looked perfectly serviceable with the Islanders this past season. Maybe it was because they played more of a trap game, but either way, Thomas Greiss has shown that he's an NHL caliber goaltender. He's not going to be the one who's bringing this team down in the way that Jimmy Howard just could not seem to stop a puck last season to save his life.
And that's the thing with Jimmy. Like I love Jimmy, but he's had like groin injury and injuries that will hamper your ability as a goalie, and we've seen it. Like, God bless him. Love the guy. Did want like love him on the team, but we need to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a good transition pairing of goalies for you guys,
Mhm.
frankly. I mean, you could do a lot worse than a tandem of Greiss and Bernier. But it also fits where your team's at. You're not looking for a lights out franchise goaltender right now.
No, and I
It's
can't
just
think of
not.
one.
Yeah.
I can't think of one on the prospect pool right now that I'm like, that's our goalie for the future. Like at a time, I thought it was Mrazek, and then we just traded him. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit doesn't, it's like you said, Dave, they don't really have that certified starter caliber goaltender in their system who looks like he's going to step in and take the reins over anytime soon. I mean, people were really high on Fulcher, but he hasn't really panned out the way people wanted him
Mhm.
to. Pottelberg hasn't panned out. Petruzzelli didn't pan out. I mean, there are so many goaltenders that Detroit has had recently that just don't pan out for whatever reason. And I think
Mhm.
maybe Bernier and Stetcher. Oh my God, this is terrible. You've got me saying it all the time now. Bernier and Grice. Bernier, Troy Stetcher's playing goaltender. That's
The whole
insane.
team is
Skechers.
just Skechers.
Skechers is living rent free in your head right now. How does that make you feel?
No, but I think
Excited.
Bernier and Grice are, like you mentioned, I mean, Detroit could do infinitely worse on their goaltender
yeah.
pairing. Grice is, I think, going to be the better goaltender, like you said, Tim, but I think it's not a bad pairing. It's still not going to get you to the playoffs, I don't think, but
But that's not what you're shooting for.
that's it. That's not what they're shooting for. I think it's an improvement over last year, and Grice is not old, but he's not young, so he may even stick around after his contract is up this year if Detroit offers him the right cap money. And I mean, they're not in a bad spot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about the Hawks goaltending situation because you guys have a really interesting one.
Boy, it is. I'm excited. No, I'm going to be really, really honest with you guys. I'm very excited for the goaltending adventure that we're about to go on together. I think that the year is going to start with Subban and Delia. I'm not sure which one's going to be the starter, but it's going to be those two that are our starter and backup. And I don't think every other game is going to benefit them. I think they need to go for 4 or 5 games and switch. Play
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 games in a row for each other because I want to see. I'm really high on Malcolm Subban. I think that he is just at the point where if he's going to tap into his potential, it's right now. And if he can get consistent playing time, like we've seen statistics that show the longer he plays and the more comfortable he gets, his save percentage and whatnot is better with extended periods versus the every once in a while game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas I really like Colin Delia's progression the last couple of years. He's gone through some adversity. He's rebounded really well from when there's been slumps. And I think that mentally, he's ready to be a starter if he's going to be. And we're just going to let
Mm-hmm.
Lankinen run wild in the AHL as the full-time starter. And by halfway through the year, he could very well have swooped in and taken the starting position. I think we've got 3 goalies that are completely untested. It's the Wild West of goalies out here, and I'm excited for someone to become the sheriff. Like,
Love it. I love it.
someone's going to take it. or we crash and burn, but we do it in style.
And like that's the crazy thing for you guys is that you guys are walking into a goaltender situation that is about as close to unknown at the NHL level as you can get.
I can't think of any other team that is in a situation in like that I can remember that
Mm-hmm.
there's no for sure goalie.
It'll
And
be
like
fun.
that's the weird thing for you guys is like you don't have the certified starter. Like I wouldn't even say you have the certified backup. It's literally just question marks.
Yeah.
Like and
No,
like
I
that's
love
not a
it.
knock on any of the goaltenders, but I think that's what it is. It's literally just
No,
question marks.
it's not a knock on any of the goaltenders because they've never had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Delia was supposed to be the backup last year, and then we signed Lehner. And well, obviously, sorry, Deals, you're back down. It's Lehner. Malcolm Subban has been behind Fleury, so he hasn't gotten to play a lot because Fleury's a beast. Lankinen, the most we know about Lankinen is the fact that he backstopped. Boy, I want to say Finland. I don't want to be wrong about that. It was Finland in the World Cup, right?
That sounds right.
I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, I think it's Finland. I feel really good about that. Uh, and all of a sudden, he took a ragtag group that had like no NHL players, and he brought them to glory. Like each of these people could be it. Any goalie can get hot. I think it's going to be one of the more interesting storylines that the NHL is going to be watching this year. And
Mm-hmm.
we've had Crawford for so long that like when Crawford's healthy, goaltending's never been a question for us.
I mean,
Yeah.
you just said it, Tim. Any goaltender can get hot. I mean, look at Jordan Binnington when St. Louis went on their run to the Cup. Nobody saw him coming at the
Oh
start of the
God, no,
season. I mean, Chicago, weirdly enough, could have that style goaltender this season. We don't know.
no. Look at Darcy Kemper. He certainly wasn't projected to be a top tier goalie, and all of a sudden there he was making Ronta look expendable.
Mm-hmm.
That's goaltending is the most unpredictable position because it's really you could have a goalie that is look at Bobrovsky.
Mm-hmm.
One year he's a Vezina quality, the next year he's at the bottom of save percentages. Brizgalov, Ilya Brizgalov was supposed to be the next big thing in goaltending, and all he's known for now is wonderful sound bites.
I mean, even Anton Khudobin from Dallas last year. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody saw
Mm-hmm.
him coming either, and he literally carried them to the finals.
Yeah,
Yes, he did.
he took
We'll see how
care
he
of
does
it.
this year.
Could be one of ours.
That would be such a weird position to be in, I think, to just literally go from being a goaltender who's not even on the radar of most fans to literally carrying your team through the playoffs to like a Stanley Cup final. That has got to be such a weird ride as a player.
Oh man, I love it. I love storylines like that.
I mean, like it's got to be so weird. I mean, Jordan Binnington he was the one that I mentioned, so I'll talk about him. I mean, literally, he went from playing in like the ECHL to playing in the Stanley Cup Finals over like the course of a year. That is an insane like journey.
Yeah, and the fact that
Yep.
he was so calm and so he like got into his zone and wasn't phased by anything is really really impressive. Because I
Yep.
would have been in my head the entire time like, oh, this is gonna bust at some point. I'm they're all gonna realize that I'm a fraud at some point. And he was just cool as ice.
Yeah,
And
good
that's the
for
thing.
him.
Like Chicago might have that situation this season. I mean, that you guys have realistically 3 goaltenders to rotate with. I think at least one of them might eventually get hot.
Mm-hmm.
I hope. That'd be great.
Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about on this episode of the podcast before we close her out?
They're gonna buy stock in Skechers.
Oh yeah. It's gonna rise this year. The only thing that I did want to bring up really, really quick, and I don't have a ton to say on it just because I don't have like all the information in front of me, but I'm super excited that the Blackhawks hired Kendall Coyne
Hmm.
to be part of their like coaching and player development team. I'm so excited because I'm a huge Kendall Coyne fan. She's fantastic, and just the fact that that's Chicago's first like female coaching and development hire that they've had, and her skill sets and abilities and her knowledge of the game is going to be so invaluable. Like the tricks that she's had to use and the her training style and her development style are so different in a lot of ways
Mhm.
that having this unique and fresh perspective for our like our prospects and our developing players, man, I'm really excited to have her on the team and to have her guiding the next crop of Blackhawks.
Hmm. And the thing is, I mean, like she knows what she's talking about. I listened to her
God, yeah.
what is she? I'm trying to remember who I heard her do commentary for, but she knows what she's talking about when she's watching games. She knows what she's seeing in front of her, like when she's watching it. So it's one of these things where she's got playing experience. I mean, obviously she hasn't played NHL, but she knows in terms of just hockey sense what's going on when it's happening, and I think that's huge. I mean, that's awesome for the Blackhawks to have something like that.
Yeah. I think we are only going to be stronger with her on the team or as a part of the team.
Jordan, you said earlier about the season start. Wasn't there a talk that it was starting New Year's Day?
Hmm.
They've pushed that back, I
Did
believe.
they?
Is it January 15th now?
Yep.
Just
Uh,
lock them in the bubble again.
it's something
Do it.
like 56 games is the most recent union talks have been. There's going to be about 56 games. It's either starting mid to late January. I know there's concerns that it could realistically get pushed back to the start of February, but both sides want to get in as many games as possible. So I
Yeah.
think mid to late January is when they're going to start, barring any major concerns.
Hmm.
Okay.
And that was actually the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about on this episode. Um, so there have got to be big ramifications for this decision. So for anybody who follows other sports, the NHL's player union has one of the strongest player unions in all of the major
Sure.
sports leagues. I mean, it
Yeah.
has got ridiculous amounts of sway when it comes to the owners, when it comes to the player salaries, when it comes to the TV deals and all that. It has huge amounts of sway.
Mhm.
My question about this is the players union agreed on, like a date with the owners, and they started to get their plans and all set in stone. And now the dates are changing. I don't think that the players union is going to look at, the situation. And the thing is, I guess my question would be, how much do you think that the players union is going to look at this decision to possibly offset the season moving forward and saying, we had a deal set in place. The owners basically tried to renegotiate the deal when they're the ones who set the original stipulations that we agreed to. Do you think that gives them leverage moving into, future considerations moving forward? Just the fact that, the players union, they had all their debt, like their debts set for like player salary and all that. They had dates set for like, these are the dates that we're planning for returning to play, for training camps, stuff like that.
Mhm.
The players union had all those things agreed on with the owners. The owners are changing that now. I know it's due to COVID and all that, but do you think that in the future, that's something that the players union is going to reference and say, well, you guys, we gave you this slack here. You're going to give us slack now.
I think
From
maybe.
oh, go ahead, David.
I think maybe. I mean, COVID is such a tricky thing because this is something that we've never really experienced. Um, but yeah, I could see the players possibly using this as some type of leverage. Do I think they will? No, but who knows what's going to happen down the road in the future?
Strictly speaking, from a labor relations standpoint, it depends entirely on how far the owners go and how what they agree upon, how many times they agree upon something and then change their minds, because yes, COVID is unpredictable. Yes, we are finding new information and things are changing all the time. However, there needs to be a continued open communication with representatives. Otherwise, it's very easy for the Players Association to step back and say, we have continuously tried to bargain with you in good faith, and despite information changing, regardless of all that, you have continued to renegotiate after things have been agreed upon. You're bargaining in bad faith. And man, if you want to keep, we have a tenuous piece right now between the owners and the players union. I would really, it would be in the owner's best interests, realistically, to, if there are any changes that have to happen because of COVID, the first people that need to know before anything is taken into effect is the representatives of the union, because otherwise they're opening the door for bad blood for the labor.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
And that was my thing. I mean, for me, I wouldn't have really thought about this until, I thought about the fact that, the NHL, like I said, does have one of the strongest unions in sports. This isn't the NFL's union or the MLB's union. Like, hockey is such a small team sport that player pools are limited, and that's what makes their union so strong.
Yeah.
But no, I just kind of wanted your guys' opinions on that, because I saw that this week and I'm like, that's kind of an interesting thought. That's something I don't think a lot of people are talking about or thinking about at the moment.
Not enough. Nobody's talking about labor issues enough as far as I'm concerned, but
Nope. Pro union.
Yeah, guilty as charged.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that will be it for the show.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hopefully, everybody who is tuning in and watching, or hopefully watching anyway, this episode has enjoyed it. For your host, Jordan Lunscott, and by my co-hosts, David Barnhouse and Tim Stompanato, this has been another edition of the Stickblade Podcast. If you ever want to get in touch with us, there are ample ways for you to do that. There is the classic email address, which is stickbladepodcast@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @stickbladepod, all one word, no underscores or anything like that. You can get in contact with us on YouTube if this ends up working and we're on YouTube. Hopefully it does. And also, you can also find us on SoundCloud or iTunes. So I don't think you can message us on iTunes because we don't have an official profile on iTunes, but we do have on SoundCloud. So you can also find us there as well. But with all that being said, again, thank you guys for tuning in to this edition of the Stickblade Podcast. You all have a safe evening, morning, afternoon, whatever time of the world it is where you're at. And thank you.
Remember, keep yourself hydrated, kids.
Yeah.